All right there. Hey there, data lovers, and welcome to another I Love Data Fridays here at the International Data Evaluation Center on the campuses of The Ohio State University. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode 34 of I Love Data Fridays. And today we are going to be talking about one of our on-demand reports, the Student Data Summary. Spent a lot of time at this national conference a couple weeks ago talking to teacher leaders about the Student Data Summary, so I thought it might be worth an episode here on I Love Data Fridays. So hey, who's talking data to you today? Well, of course, you've got me, Jeff Breimer-Bashore, Director and Principal Investigator here at IDEC. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about our Student Data Summary on-demand report. First, we'll be reviewing the layout of the report, and then we'll get into the meat of the report, and we're going to talk about some of the data it's showing you, and what you'll notice that on the report that some of the students have a color coding or shading on them, and what exactly does this shading mean? And finally, then, why do I care about this shading? And the reason why we care about it so much is it can help us with a little time management. So let's get into it, folks. Let's get in there and talk a little data.
I love Data Friday!
All right, first up, we're going to talk about the layout of the report. If you don't know how to get to the Student Data Summary, let me quickly show you. I'm going to bring up my web browser. To get to the Student Data Summary, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the Reports tab on the website. Once that page comes up, you will then click on the On-Demand Reports tab. When you do that, a new tab will open, and from there, from the drop-down list, you will select Student Data Summary, and this will bring up a sample Student Data Summary. Now, I am not going to use this one right here as an example. I have a copy of the Student Data Summary that uses some real data, and we are going to look at that. So let me bring that up real quick. So here is my copy of a Student Data Summary. Now you'll notice some blurring out on the screen. We've blurred out all of the identifying information here, but I wanted to use a sample with some real data because what I'm going to talk about with the report, having some real data, is really going to make a better impression or impact here as we talk about it. So first of all, let's quickly go over the layout of the report. So the Student Data Summary shows you some basic summary information about the students that are being served in your site. As teachers enter data, the report fills out throughout the school year. There is one page for each school district in your site. So you'll notice in this example, we're on page 1 of 10. This site happens to have 10 school districts, so there is one Student Data Summary page for each school district. The site name will appear at the top of the report. The name of the school district appears here in the dark blue area. It just gives you some basic student counts, teacher counts, and school counts in the blue area up here. If we skip down then here to sort of this beige or mocha color area, this will be where you'll see the name of a school. This one happens to be blurred out. And this will tell you where the data for a school starts. The blue areas are data for teachers. So you will see the teacher names in the blue area in the top left-hand corner. There's two teachers that I'm showing on the screen. It'll give you some basic information about their reading recovery kids. If they happen to be working with literacy lesson kids, some basic information. For the reading recovery kids, the number of slots, number of kids they've discontinued, the average number of lessons per week they are giving. And then for each teacher, below the blue shaded, the light blue shaded area, are the actual rows of data for their children. So there is one row for each student that a teacher worked with. You will see what study group they're in, whether they're reading recovery, random sample, or DLL, or tested not instructed. The student name is in the next column. How many lessons the student got, how many weeks their intervention was, how many list of lessons, so it sums up those 4 questions on the exit page, how many missed lessons, how many lessons per week the student was getting, and then text reading level at fall, exit, fall entry, exit, and year end. And then finally, the end of intervention status for the students. So now, as I said earlier, this report fills out throughout the school year as teachers enter data. So, for example, in the fall, if you have your teachers enter all of the fall data, this fall column will populate with that information. As they do their exit and entry data, or entry and exit data, the exit information will start to fill out, such as the lessons, weeks, and missed lessons, and the lessons per week. Now, this is important for what I'm going to talk about next, if you have teachers entering data throughout the school year. So now, you're already noticing it. Why are some of the rows shaded and other rows aren't on this report? What is it trying to indicate for me? So let me get back to my slides. Let's talk about what does the shading mean in the report. So the rows that are sort of shaded in that pinkish, and I actually went and looked back at the report design, they're actually shaded with a color that's called misty rose. So those who are shaded with the misty rose, is what it's trying to tell you is that based on the student's fall OS total score, our data system thinks that this student is more likely to be recommended. Specifically, it's shading kids, for reading recovery kids, it's shading kids who have a fall OS total score less than a 346. And for DLL students, it's shading kids who have a fall OS total score less than a 440. So this is why I'm emphasizing, if you have your teachers start entering data in the fall about their children, the report will start shading their rows because the shading is keyed off of their fall data. So, for example, with these kids, you'll notice that under this first teacher here, we have 3 rows that are shaded with our misty rose color. And these kids had a fall OS total score of less than 346, and the system is predicting that they are actually going to be recommended. And actually, these children did actually end up being recommended if you look at their end of program statuses. All right, so that is what the misty rose or pinkish color is trying to tell us there. Now let me go back to our slides. Let's talk about the bluish or purplish shading depending on your monitor. Now I went back and looked at the color. These are actually shaded in lavender on there. So what the lavender shading is telling us that based on the student's fall OS total score, that this student might actually read at a text level 16 by spring without an intervention. And specifically for RR students, it's shading the kids who have a fall OS total score greater than or equal to a 418. That these kids will probably reach a text reading level 16 without an intervention by the spring. For the DLL kids, it's the kids who have a fall OS total score greater than or equal to 90. So let's go back to our sample report that we were looking at. So we have one child down here on the report that's shaded with the lavender color there. And we can see they had a fall text reading level of 2. I bet this was a second round kid. They came in with a text level of 12, and they finished the year end discontinued with an 18. So the system thinks that this student might have actually gotten to a 16 by themselves. So now, here comes the next question. That's great. We know what the shading means. So why do I care about all of this shading? And as I said at the start of the podcast, I think you should care about it because it's about, it can help you with what I think is time management. So you're a teacher leader, you're a busy person, and you only have so many hours in the day devoted to doing your tasks as a teacher leader. So if you had to think about which students do I sort of want to keep tabs on, really keep tabs on, I think the student data summary can help do that. Which students might require most of my attention. So I'm telling you right here, the students that are shaded with that misty rose shaded color, the pinkish kids, these are the kids that probably are going to require most of your attention, because remember, the system is predicting that the students are going to be more likely to be recommended. And if we look at data from last year, so last year we had 4,856 reading recovery students, and I'm specifically looking at first round full program students who had a fall OS total score less than 346. The data system correctly predicted that 73% of those students would be that they would be recommended. So a pretty high percentage of correct predictions there that they were going to be recommended. So, and DLL students. DLL students, there were a little less. We don't collect as much data on DLL students. We had 71 that were first round full program and had a OS total score of less than 440. And it predicted that 68% of them would be recommended, and it predicted those correctly. So, I mean, still pretty high percentages in both cases. So, if you're thinking about who do I want to focus most of my attention on, it's probably going to be on these misty rose shaded students. If you remember, Clay tells us, and we've seen it from data, that who do you want to be monitoring for the 4th and 5th week of reading recovery is pretty important. Kids who are going to be recommended or discontinued tend to diverge at that point and don't quite make the same accelerated growth. So who do you want to look at that 4th and 5th week or really pay attention to? Those misty rose shaded kids. So then the report is also suggesting that, which students may require the least of my attention. It's probably going to be the lavender shaded kids. So remember, the lavender shading implies that these kids had a fall OS total score of greater than 418, and it's predicting that they will actually make it to a text level of 16 without an intervention by the spring. To sort of kind of test this out, I looked at our random sample students. So I looked at 1,385 of our random sample students who had that fall OS total score of a 418 or greater, and I made sure that they didn't get reading recovery, and I made sure that they didn't get any other literacy intervention, and 89% of them reached the text level of 16 or above in the spring. So lending some, I think, some evidence that, that 418, you may not have to monitor those kids as much. With the DLL students, I looked at the DLL random sample. Once again, 452 DLL random sample students that didn't get DLL. They had their OS total score greater than a... I forgot what their OS total score. It wasn't a 418. Let's go back. It was a total score greater than or equal to 490. And they didn't get DLL. They didn't get any other literacy intervention. And by the end of this school year, they reached 96% of them reached a text level 16 or higher. So once again, lending some evidence to, these lavender shaded kids, probably don't require as much of your attention. So time management, to help you manage your time and to focus your time where you think it might do the greatest amount of good. So now here in Reading Recovery, we're all about beating the prediction of failure. I mean, that's like Reading Recovery's premises. We're taking kids that normally sort of would be given up on and sort of resigned to going into special education. We're all about beating that prediction. So I'm here to tell you that these, especially the misty rose kids, the lavender shade or the pinkish shaded kids, them being predicted to be having a recommended intervention is not a foregone conclusion. We want to beat that prediction. So I'm just saying, use the student data summary to help guide you where help guide you where I need to focus my attention so we can beat that prediction. So teachers can beat the prediction. So there you go. Folks, hey, thanks once again for watching another I Love Data Fridays here. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, just click the subscribe button right there on our YouTube channel. And that way you'll get all the updates and notifications about I Love Data Fridays and all other IDEC videos. I'm going to cue the outro music here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say thank you for watching another episode of I Love Data Fridays. So glad we could have you here again. And hey, we will talk data to you later.